Good afternoon, and welcome to an Eris informational webinar. I'm Tim Kruse, Vice President and Product Manager of Eris, and I'm really happy to have you here today. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to spend some time learning about Eris and how we can help make your information smarter. The agenda for this afternoon is really just these three items. We'll give you an opportunity to ask some questions, and I'm also going to give you a brief demonstration, a high-level overview of the Eris application, just so you can see what it looks like, and also give you a little bit of a flavor of how it is used by our clients. So once again, appreciate you being here. Before we get started, though, wanted to explain how you can ask a question. To keep the room easier to manage, we've muted everyone, but you can ask questions by opening the chat window and typing your questions in there. We have a moderator who will manage those questions, and he'll get them to me during the webinar as we go along. If you have questions after the webinar, then feel free to reach out directly to me at my email address, which is on the screen. So let's get started. The first question everyone asks is, what is Eris? What does it really do? So this slide explains it. We are a browser-based solution, primarily focused to do data management, and we do these three things extremely well. We help you manage, analyze, and visualize your information. That's what Eris does. Now, don't be confused by the word browser-based. Eris does not and is not always deployed in the cloud. We're not internet-based, just simply browser-based, which means there's no software to install. But most of the time, an Eris application or the Eris server is located or stored on-premise, but it also can be deployed in the cloud or in a number of different ways within your organization to help you manage your information. We also underline the word enterprise data because Eris does connect to just about anything within your organization. This slide gives you the sample data sets of where Eris is connected to. We started out connecting to SCADA systems, but we've broadened Eris's reach to connect to just about any type of application or data storage within your organization. So we have clients who are connected to all of these kinds of systems, and we have some that are only connected to just a few, but just about any data repository, any place where you store data, Eris can connect to. And what does it do? Well, it helps you visualize, analyze, or manage that information. So it's an enterprise system that helps you do those three things. Well, how do we deploy Eris? Well, we start with those sources that we just described. In this case, I've got 4 samples. One is a SCADA system, a LIM system, and then we've got 2 data sources, one for electronic logbook data and one for the manually entered data. And those sources will be on your environment, and we will put in an Eris server, usually deployed as a virtual appliance, or it can go in as a physical appliance, either way. And we have these things called connectors that connect the Eris server to those data sources. This implementation takes approximately a day, and we're not kidding. We can have an Eris server up and running and able to work with your data in usually less than a day. And once we're connected, you're off and running. We're utilizing Eris to do data visualizations, building dashboards and reports. We can use our analysis tools, our calculation engine, or we can help you organize your information to make it more meaningful. Typically, we have partners then who extend the reach of Eris outside of their organization using our product called Eris Web Data, where they can then access data sources that exist outside of their enterprise, such as maybe weather data, or maybe they have a Internet of Things company that is producing data for them in the cloud. and we use Eris web data as a portal or a data brokering tool to get that data within their organization. And finally, another use of Eris is to push data or broker data into other applications. We have clients who are using Eris to push data into their mapping systems, their GIS systems, or collecting runtime data from their SCADA system and pushing that into their maintenance management or their computerized maintenance management systems, their CMMSs. So Eris can be used in a lot of different ways, but the key takeaway is it's very easy to deploy and has lots and lots of uses. So around each of the functions that Eris does, from a management perspective, there's all different kinds of ways to use Eris as a management tool. I talked about it connecting to data. We also have the Eris web data, which I mentioned, but there's also a tool called data validation that builds a clean data stream of data typically used for regulatory applications. We also have a really easy to use report builder. And then I mentioned earlier, but we have lots of tools that help you put data into a database using manual data entry forms and sheets. We also have an electronic logbook that I will show you during the demonstration how easy it is to use. That logbook and some of the other tools like the manual data entry can be accessed using specifically designed mobile applications that work both on the iOS and the Android platforms. We also do a lot of exporting of data, so you can get data out of Eris or using Eris to get it out of source systems very easily. And we also have a whole way to add what we call tag descriptors, which allow you to create metadata around the data that is stored within your data sources, maybe your SCADA system or your laboratory system. Gives you a way to just make it easier to find and easier to use for your end users. From an analytics perspective, this is where Eris really shines. We have a really easy to use but powerful calculation engine that basically allows you to do either simple or complex algorithms on data to help you find data that doesn't fit or is having problems. We have this whole process called monitor tags, which I'm going to demonstrate through a client experience where it really looks for data anomalies or things that are out of place and helps you identify those passively while you're off doing something else. Eris is looking for exceptions and then notifies you when problems happen. And we can also create what we call rule-based tags, which are really just pseudo tags or tags that don't really exist. They're data points that don't really exist, but are built on calculations that or rules in the Eris language that help you create new data from existing data and give you different ways to look at data. And finally, we have lots of ways to visualize all of this information with dashboards and reports, and even ways to go find data through ad hoc or queries or trends. But unlike a lot of other systems, we also connect to your SCADA alarm databases and have lots of ways to help you look at SCADA alarms using an alarm statistic program that's built on the ISA 18.2 standard. So if you're familiar with that or want to use Eris to help you look at your alarm statistic, you can do that. And as well as I mentioned earlier, but we can connect to lots of different maintenance or asset systems, and Eris has lots of tools to help you manage and analyze and visualize that type of information as well. So who uses Eris and why do they use it? Well, this is an example of or a map of our partners within Canada. So we are based in North America. So we have partners both in Canada and the United States. Lots of partners in Eastern Canada and some out in the West as well. And here are our U.S. partners. We're looking to expand the U.S. partner base, but have a pretty good distribution across the United States. Here's a list of some of the partners that you may have mentioned, or may have seen, or heard of. Denver Water is significantly a large customer, but we also have the city of Toronto in Canada and lots of the major cities in Canada, along with several large cities in the United States as well. So why do people use Eris? Well, this slide is intentionally complex and very cluttered. That's to help you visualize that people use Eris for a lot of different reasons. There's lots of things that Eris can be used for, pretty much anything you can think of when it comes to analyzing or visualizing data or information, Eris can be used for. So we have people who use this Eris just for electronic logbooks, or we have people who use it to manage their energy consumption, or use it for data validation, or help with assets, or operational reporting. Everything you see on this screen, someone within our Eris customer base is using Eris to do that type of work. So next I'm going to get into a few examples, specific examples of how some customers are using Eris. The first example is the city of Winnipeg using Eris. They call it report by exception. Eris, the terminology is called monitor tags, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how they're using Eris to help them find and resolve and then keep track of things that happen that are unexpected or out of place within their organization. They're reports by exception. So how do monitor tags work? So this graphic, this workflow, or this schematic kind of explains the 4 different phases of monitor tags. The first thing that Eris is doing is monitoring or looking for unexpected or even expected results, things that it can flag. And this happens on a repeatable schedule, so you can look for things every day, every hour, all down to maybe every 10 or 15 minutes if you want. This is not designed to replace alarming that may come out of a process control or a SCADA system. This is designed to be looking for monitoring of things that are not critical. This is not the fire alarm, but this is more of a passive alarm or passive looking system. So as the monitoring happens, if it finds something, things are flagged, and then people are notified. And the notification can happen to individuals or groups in or outside of your organization, and people can be then assigned work tasks. Those work tasks are associated with workflows, and assignees who have been given work tasks then accomplish or do that work and then provide feedback within Eris to tell what they have done, either through comments and or closing of work assigned tasks. And the notification process continues through this entire workflow. So not only are individuals notified at the beginning of the event, but they can be notified throughout it. So as people open tasks and start tasks, and people close tasks, or people make comments, all of that can be distributed out to the notification group that may be interested in what is happening. And at the completion of that process, there's an entire feedback loop again, that all of the feedback that was accumulated throughout the entire process is consolidated into a final report, and that final report can be sent out to anyone within the group or with any individual. So a different set of notification people can be used at that point as well. So this is all about finding issues, notifying people, tracking what was done, and storing or archiving that feedback in a permanent format. So how does that work? Well, the first thing we're looking for are out of whack conditions or things that are happening that are not what needs to be happening. So we're maybe looking for things that are out of range, or things that values that change at an unrealistic rate, or maybe data that's supposed to be there that's not there, or really any kind of algorithm or combination of values from specific data points that are of interest can be flagged and kick off the monitoring process. Email is the typical way in which we communicate what's going on. This is an example of an email that was sent out. Talks about the pH being out of range, and can have lots of different people can be notified. It can even include a report that might be generated by Eris to help people understand what was going on when this exception happened. The work tasks are managed by this portal called our My Tasks portal, and people interact with Eris and review and comment and complete their work tasks using this part of the application. The left side is how they interact. The right side is just the recording of what is going on. This workflow status is still incomplete, even though a few of the steps have been completed. The entire process is not complete. And when it's done, though, the workflow then will show that the work status is complete, and a complete archive of what has happened is available for everyone to look at. And it can also be downloaded and stored. Our client, Winnipeg, puts this into a document management system and keeps this for long-term archival storage. The second example is from the city of Waterloo. They are using Eris as a data visualization and analytics tool, looking at water distribution pressure and looking also for leaks. The instrumentation that they are using is placed within fire hydrants. So it's hydrant systems that have pressure and leak detection using acoustic or pressure listening devices that are stored or that are placed in hydrants throughout their distribution system. But Eris is the tool that they're using to do the data visualization and analytics. So in this example, this is an Eris chart at the top that shows a kind of a blip there in the round circle, and that is an actual transient event or a transient pressure event where a pressure wave is passing through the distribution system at the speed of sound. The instrumentation is able to detect that, and then it records the sample in over 100 samples per second. And the detail that we're showing you on the bottom is Eris being able to display all of the samples, those 100 samples per second over that sound wave. So that's a very short period of time, less than a minute or so of data, all shown in that little circle at the bottom. There's also a different type of user interface looking at this data as well. We've got a map interface that shows the sampling points, those fire hydrants that have the pressure and the acoustic listening devices. This is an example of the screen that shows what the information area looked like before a leak. I'm going to give a spoiler alert. We're going to see a leak here. So on April 7th of this year, there was nothing really going on. Everything looked like it was in normal condition. On April 8th, there's a few small yellow circles right around these couple of hydrants. Unfortunately, the organization, City of Waterloo, didn't notice them in time, but that was the start of a leak. At least it was what we now know was the start of a leak, because on April 9th, it was pretty obvious what was happening. There was a huge leak in the system. Those rings show in representation the amount of sound within the system. So those are the bigger and the redder the circles are, the more sound, the more acoustic data that's being gathered up by the sensors and then being visually displayed within Eris as well. We also have another look at the same data. This is using the Eris scatter graph technology. So the red dots represent sound data that's being captured for today in each one of the hydrant collection systems, the hydrant systems instrumentation. The gray dots in the background represent the previous 2 weeks average data. So you can see that the gray lines are pretty small and level and right along the bottom of the chart, and the days graphic when there was a leak, obviously lots of sound, lots of stuff going on ahead of time. The third example is from another customer up in Canada called the Rural Municipality of McDonald and their use of electronic logbooks. So they were using paper logbooks. I love this. They purchased them at Walmart, and they would have, it would only be within their plant operations. So in the control room is where they would store the paper logbooks. And they would never really write down who worked on a given day. It was just, you kind of had to be able to read or detect who happened to write in the logbook to see who might have been on call that day. They also consistently would use the logbooks to leave gaps when they thought somebody might want to come back and fill in more details. Although oftentimes those details never got added, and so there would be these big breaks within the logbook when somebody thought somebody might want to write something, but it never got filled in or caught up later. The other thing they would do within their logbooks is put sticky notes in them to explain to people or give a note to show where someone might have stored a picture. Or they may have hand drawn in a note or something in the logbook. But these sticky notes would tell them where on the hard drive or in the file system or maybe what email they could go look at to find the picture that would help understand what the log entry was all about. Not really efficient. Well, McDonald introduced Eris, and now they have a electronic logbook where they are using it substantially to, one, keep track of who was working during any shift. So that's what this log entry is down here. This has the listing of everyone who was on duty for a particular day. Even operators that were on call are all listed within an entry on the day. And then they have the list of log entries, including entries on the weekend from people who may or may not even be on at the plant working. But people using the mobile application can make entries from anywhere. So what does the team really like about it? Well, they've really got three huge benefits. One, they really like the flexibility of being able to put log entries in just about anywhere. They can do it in the plant, at any computer, but they can also use the mobile application to do it online, whether they're on the grounds of the facility or not. And everyone can look at the logbook. They're not just the people within the control room, but anyone within the area who has access to the logbook can see what's going on. And even more importantly, they can make logbook entries, like I said, from home. If they're on call or they get a call, somebody can make a log entry, or they can go, if they go directly to the field on a non-work day and come back, they can make log entries from just about any place that has where they have their phone. So one example happened. So our partner was out in the field looking at a lagoon or a pond on the property and saw an algae bloom that was growing up in their pond, made a quick picture, took a picture of it, added to a mobile entry, and submitted the logbook entry from her phone. And about 20 minutes later, walked back into the control room and found her team already working on that problem. So she didn't have to make a phone call, didn't have to notify anyone, simply put a log entry into the electronic logbook with the photo, and that started people solving problems. So really easy to use and gets people's attention. The second example that they provided for us was they have this hard to find curb stop. And in the past, it was hard to remember where this was on this person's property. So they simply just took a photo, added a log entry that included the customer's address, and now anytime anyone wants to be able to find that customer curb stop, they can easily go to the electronic logbook, search for that address, and get to see this picture. So another easy way to use the logbook as a simple way to share information. So those three examples give us to the final question, which is, why do people, or what's the value proposition around Eris? Well, we believe it's four things. The first and foremost is that this system, Eris, was designed specifically for the water industry. We grew up in the water industry. We talk with professionals in the industry. We are professionals and leaders in the industry, and this product is a representation of that. And we are constantly improving Eris. We have a full development team that works constantly to improve Eris. And where do we get our ideas? Well, we get our ideas from the people who are using Eris. We intentionally go get our clients and ask them how we can make Eris better. We do that through a whole partner initiative where we work with our customers as if they're partners in the application. And then finally, what makes us different is, well, Eris is not just designed for one small group of users within your organization. It's not just designed for operations or just not designed for water quality staff or maybe engineers, but it's designed for the entire suite of people that work at your organization, from upper management to operators and everyone in between. It is designed to be used just by about anybody within the organization because we have all of those different tools that are available. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes now and see if there are any questions. Moderator Emma has been looking at the chat. Emma, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple. So the first question is if parts of Eris can be implemented a la carte. For example, I could see the value in implementing electronic logbooks immediately while waiting to implement other parts of Eris in the future.
Great question. So yes, we do implement specifically the electronic logbook module can be deployed separately. That is the only part of Eris that we do segment out and allow people to buy independently. So you can buy the electronic logbooks by itself. And we have a number of different ways in which we offer that in a lot of different pricing methods and models, both from a one-time purchase as well as an ongoing subscription. Work with you to make sure and try to fit whatever is the best purchasing method for you. But yes, Eris has, and the electronic logbook specifically, can be purchased separately as its own product. Any other questions?
Awesome. Yeah, so can historical data be used in Eris, or is it only data from the point of the implementation forward?
Great question. So Eris connects to data where it lives. So that's the great thing about Eris is you put Eris in and it connects to whatever data you have, which is any data that is newly created, but also any data that you have long-term stored. So if you have a historian that has 10 years worth of historical data, the minute we drop in Eris, we're connected to that 10 years of historical data. Same thing with laboratory system. Your laboratory system may have 5 or 6 years worth of data and information. We drop Eris into your environment, connect it to your LIMS system, and you immediately have access to all of that historical information. We're not copying data and putting data into Eris. We're connecting Eris to those source systems and giving you access to that data using Eris as the conduit. So you immediately have access to all of the data within your enterprise as soon as we drop Eris in. There is no waiting for data to accumulate or building. It's not from this time and forward, but it's whatever you have. So great question, Emma. Any others?
That's all that I have right now, but I'll keep monitoring the conversation box.
Great. Well, I'm going to take this time then to now do a brief little demo of Eris. So let me exit out of my PowerPoint presentation. So this is an Eris application. This is a browser I'm using, Microsoft Chrome. And this is we call this the Anytown Water Services. This is just a typical implementation of how people might use an Eris application. The one thing about Eris that makes this a little bit different is that everything that you see on this screen can be configured specifically for your organization. So I have an Eris that looks like this, but I can also have an Eris that looks like this. A much broader and bigger menuing system, one that even hides the header and footer or header information. But I'm going to go back to our typical partner site and show you how typical people use Eris. So this is what most of our clients would see or at least look at. In this case, I've got an electronic logbook on my landing page, but that could easily be anything. These menus, like I said, could be modified and adjusted to match how your users use Eris. I also have some manual data entry forms here. So here's an example of an afternoon rounds form. Here's a form where people can do and manually enter data. I've got another page where people can look at reports and maybe even build a report. A couple of dashboards, not a lot of data there. And then another page where people can look at trends. Got a couple of lines on the trend. So let me go back to the logbook and show you how to use the logbook. So real simple tool to use. We have this concept of labels. It automatically knows what date and time it is. So I'm going to make a new logbook entry. Labels are just added data or metadata that helps me organize my log entry. So I'm going to make a sample entry about blowers, and I'm just going to pretend that it happened after hour. So I'm going to add an after hour blowers call. So, last night there was an issue with blower number 1. All maintenance this morning. And I add it to the log, and it drops directly into the log. Now you notice that it's not the top one in the log. Why? Well, because this top entry is actually pinned. So we have this concept of pinning entries to the logbook. So this entry will stay here until it's either unpinned or until it expires. You'll also notice that there's a lot of information. Both the labels that I added to this entry are now available. What's really nice about Eris is if I want to look at just things that happen to contain blowers, well, I simply click the label and the log filters to blowers. So anything that has that blowers label, I can get rid of that. The application will now expand. So now I'm looking at all of the log entries as well. I can do the same thing with aeration as well. Click on the aeration label, and now I'm filtered down to everything at aeration. So really simple, easy way to find information using labels, but I can also look for anything by a simple keyword search as well. So if I want to look at any label or any entry that has the word offline in it, well, there we go. I'm filtered down to anything that has the word offline. So this is how the people in McDonald were looking for that address, simply looking by the entry. And these Entries are not just static. We can add attachments, so you can add those pictures that we were talking about. We can pin this to the top, or we can link entries together. So you can create links, whether entries are related or blocked or duplicated or relates to a bunch of different reasons are available here, but you can link entries together. You can see also that I can have access to multiple logbooks. So we've got a training logbook here as well, so people can practice and play around with the logbook, and then they have their access to their main logbook. The tabs only show to people who have access to specific logbooks. So if I didn't have access to the training logbook, I wouldn't see the tab for training. I showed you the manual data entry form for the rounds. To put time or data in is as simple as me typing in information. So if this pump ran for 12.5 hours, I used 302 volts and is in good condition, I can simply add that information. I don't have to fill out the complete form. I can hit save, and now that information is stored within a database. And I can look at the log and see what, how, and why that information was added. So I can see the values were added by who and what the process was. They were added. If I made a mistake and I need to make a change, that shouldn't have been 302, it should have been 203. I make the change. There's a complete audit log now. So when I go back to the audit log, I can see what the value is now and how and why it was updated. To run a report is real simple within Eris. All I need to know is the report name. So I'm going to run this monthly well report, and then I just need to know when I want to run this for. I'm going to go look at a report from last year. So let's go back to August of 2018. I simply grab the start date because it already knows what period I'm running. And there is my monthly report for August of 2018 for this well report. Shows all the chlorine and the ammonia and how much water was delivered out of this well. To build a report is simple as well. So I'm going to go to our report builder tool. Give the report a name. I'm going to tell it what type of template to use. I'm going to create a letter portlet. I can select layout or just grab a block. I'm just going to put a simple table of data on this report, just because I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're going to edit this table. I'm going to get some data points from a query that I've already created. So I'm going to add some chlorine tags. All of the information about these chlorine tags is stored within here, and I can make changes if I want, but I believe the defaults. So I'm looking at hourly data, the average of 1 hour. To make it a little bit easier for y'all to see, I'm going to just increase the size, the table font size, and I'm going to give the header just a different color just to make it look interesting. I'm going to add some summarization on the bottom of each column. So the min, max, and the average. I'm going to save that. And now I've got a table of data on this report. Let me go ahead and save it. As this is saving, I get a message that says my webinar demo report is saved. So let's go run that report. I know this is hourly averages, so I'm going to go and grab this report. Webinar demo report. I'm only going to run this for a couple of days. And let's come back into the present. I'll go back and grab this from August 1st to August 3rd or August 2nd. Same way to run the report. And now I've got my table of data. So this is the chlorine values over the 2 days, got a couple of pages, and then there's my summarizations at the bottom. So real simple, easy to use reporting tool. Once I've got a report here, I can easily export it to a lot of different formats. PDF is the one most people use. And now I have a very nice paginated report that I can, send to a printer. I can download an email. I can also have Eris do this whole process automatically. I don't have to run a report, but I can have it scheduled and emailed directly to people. Last thing I want to show you is the trend tool. So this is a way to quickly and easily look for information. So, I've grabbed a couple of tags right here. This data is looking at yesterday's data. Let me go back and look at the 11th. So now I'm looking at August 11th data. And I'm looking at a single day. I'm going to go and change this to a couple of days. You'll notice that I'm not clicking anything. It automatically refreshes. I'm looking at 10-minute intervals. This data I know is stored at 1-minute intervals, but because I'm looking at 2 days, it adjusts the interval to look at every 10 minutes. If I go and even look at 1 week of data, now it'll adjust my interval to make sense. So now it's looking at every 30-minute samples, just because I'm looking at a larger section of data. So real nice, kind of cool. But a nice unique feature of Eris is if I want to see this exact same data, but for the previous month, well, it adds 2 more lines. It's kind of hard to see, but I will show you that now I'm looking at the current week that I had, August 11th through the 17th versus July 11th through the 17th, the previous month. And if that's even harder to see, I can make the charts a little bigger. And now I can see a little bit more detail simply, quickly, and easily. And I've got all kinds of control over how these look. If I don't like that color, I can simply make that color a dark gray if I want, and it'll redraw the line for me in a dark gray. So real simple, easy to use tool, helps you find and look at information quickly and rapidly. So that's all I wanted to show you from an Eris perspective and a demonstration. Are there any more questions, Emma, before we close?
I've got one last question. Someone is wondering what support and training looks like with Eris.
Great question. So from a support standpoint, we support the product just like any commercial off-the-shelf application. We have a full support team with trained professionals. So we have the ability for people to call in and talk to someone. We also have an online archive of lots of different information, from manuals to frequently asked questions to a searchable archive of answers to a lot of questions that people have already posted to us. You can also submit. We have an online ticketing system where you can submit questions and or problems and or requests for training or anything. You can just go online and say, hey, I need help with this. And we have people who are monitoring that ticketing system, and they'll get back to you really quickly. We have a lot of people who are actively working on that. So there's lots of ways to get support from our team. We also have a project team that can help you build things if you want us to help you. So we have a project team, a support team, and then we have a complete application development team that if something happens or you need new functionality, we can build that into the application or fix bugs. But finally, what's kind of unique about the users of Eris is we also have a very active, what we call a partner community. So not only can you come to us to get answers, but you can also go to each other, other users of Eris. And we have a very active partner organization where people within our different communities, people from Fort Wayne and people from the city of Toronto, have talked together to help try to solve problems that they're both trying to address. So they share reports and they share ideas of how they organize the page layouts and how they organize their groups of users. We have other people who, share their calculations and share ideas around how they monitor tags. So you don't just have access to us, but you also have access to other users through our partner community. So I hope that answers that question. Any others, Emma, before we close?
Nope, that's all the questions I have. But remember that you can email your questions after the end of the webinar.
Great. I'm going to put that slide up here again. So thanks again for being part of our informational webinar today. Once again, my name was Tim Kruse. My contact information is there. Very much appreciated you taking time out of your busy day, and have a great rest of the week. Thanks.